9 days of spitting the truth to yourself and those around you. It's going to help stir things up so that when Mercury transits back into Scorpio on November 18th and is there until it moves back into Sagittarius, which is December 11th. So from November 18th to December 11th, it's about having those deep, uncomfortable conversations that need to be had in order to transform your mental process and the way that you think about intimacy. In order to transform your mental process and how you think about and what you think about intimacy, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to be honest with others. Because that is what is righteous. The truth hurts, but the truth will set you free. You got to deal with the pain first. It's not easy to hear the truth, but once you know it and you get over the pain, it really does set you free. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of November 3rd to the 9th, where we will be highlighting or covering 10 transits. 10 transits again this week. This is the fourth week in a row that we have covered at least 9. 2 of the last 4 weeks we've had 9 transits. 2 of the last 4 weeks we've had 10 transits. So, there is a lot of shifting and moving that is going on right now. Like, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? How have these shifts been? How have they been affecting you? How are you moving with all the astral planetary movement, all the planetary interactions? It's been a lot these last few weeks. So I'm curious to know. Always happy to hear from you. Leave a comment and let me know how these transits are affecting you. So we've got 10 transits this week. And usually, it's like we're highlighting this one transit or these 2 or maybe even 3 transits. But this week, we are highlighting 5 transits. There are 5 major transits happening out of the 10 transits that we're covering this week. There's Mars transiting into Sagittarius. There's the full moon in Taurus. There's Venus transiting into Scorpio. Uranus, which is retrogrades back into Taurus. That's going to be the Substack essay of the week that we're highlighting at the end of the episode. And then the week closes out with Mercury Retrograde in Sagittarius. So Mars in Scorpio, or Mars in Sagittarius, the full moon in Taurus, Venus in Scorpio, Uranus retrograde in Taurus, and Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. Whew. Over a 1-week period from November 4th to the 11th, there are 6 transits, 6 major transits, because next week we're going to be covering Jupiter retrograde, begins its retrograde transit through Cancer. So there's a lot to get into this week. And to kind of sum it all up and boil it down and figure out okay, what is going on here on planet Earth? A lot of shifting, a lot of moving. And that's why we're here. We're here to give you insight into these astral alignments to hopefully guide and empower you through the week ahead. So let's begin with the first transit, which is Mars in Scorpio forming a trine with Neptune retrograde in Pisces. This is at the final degree, the 29th degree, the very last degree. It's intense. It's an intense way to start out the week when you're starting at the final degree. It's maybe a dramatic, I think of like shaking up a champagne bottle and then popping the cork. It's very dramatic. It's like boom, or if like you go into if you're in a movie theater in the middle of summer in a dark theater, and it's like the afternoon, it's hot outside, you're in the cold air-conditioned movie theater, and then you walk out the back door and it's like, oh my god, whoa, it's like the sun is blinding, it's hot outside. It's a very different shifting of the energy, and that's what we're going to have from the first transit into the second transit, which will be Mars in Sagittarius. But first, with the first transit, Mars in Scorpio, Mars is the god of war. It's the planet of action, aggression, conflict, the planet of confidence and authenticity. Scorpio is the fixed water sign symbolized by the scorpion and ruled by Mars, as well as Pluto. So Mars is in a position of power in the sign that it rules, Scorpio, forming a trine, which is a supportive aspect to Neptune, the god of fresh water and the sea, the planet of illusion, deception, compassion, intuition, transiting retrograde through the mutable water sign, symbolized by the fish and ruled by Neptune, as well as Jupiter. So Mars is in a position of power because it's in the sign that it rules, Scorpio. Neptune is in a position of power because it's in the sign that it rules, Pisces. So this is a very, very intense but powerful and supportive aspect to begin the week, and what it's asking us to do. And this is something that we're already feeling since last week. This aspect started to take shape around Friday, October 31st, and it continues until Tuesday, November 4th, but the exact trine occurs on Monday, November 3rd. So what is this aspect about, this transit? It's asking us to go into the deep, nitty-gritty, sticky, icky parts of your relationships. It's about engaging with those that you are most intimate with, engaging with those that you feel most vulnerable to. Mars in Scorpio is saying, do you have the courage to be intimate, to be vulnerable, to put yourself in a vulnerable situation? Now, this is not to say that you're meant to put yourself into any vulnerable situation. It's about the right vulnerable situation. It's about allowing yourself to be vulnerable with somebody who you trust, somebody who you know is already elevating you. Because look, even if you love somebody and you feel deeply loved by them, there is vulnerability. I just think of sex. It's like we're talking about Scorpio and Mars. Mars is the planet of attraction. It rules the physical act of sex. And Scorpio represents the deep bonding that occurs during that act. Now, even if you are in love with someone and they are in love with you, when you take off your clothes in front of them, you are putting yourself in a vulnerable position. The genitalia is a very vulnerable part of your body. It's like why a man doesn't like to be kicked in the balls or kneed in the balls. It's a vulnerable part of the body. So when I say that, do you have the courage to be vulnerable, it's not just with anyone. It's, do you have the courage to be vulnerable with those that are worthy of receiving your vulnerability, because they have proven to you that this is somebody that elevates you. When you take off your clothes in front of them, they tell you how beautiful you are, that your body's perfect. They're elevating you. There's healing that happens with this transit at the final degree of Scorpio and Pisces with Mars and Neptune. Neptune brings that feeling of guilt, shame, regret, blame. You take off your clothes, you may feel ashamed of how you look naked. But if you're with the right person, they elevate you and they say, no, you are beautiful. Your body is beautiful. Who is that in your life? And it doesn't have to be sex. It could be a secret. Because when you share a secret with somebody, maybe you share something about yourself that you might be ashamed of. You did something that you regret. You expressed something that you're blaming yourself for. But if you're connecting to somebody who is worthy of your vulnerability, they say, I understand you. I hear where you're coming from there. I see you. And I still love you. Because Neptune's also about compassion and empathy. And so the goal of this transit with Mars in Scorpio, Trine, Neptune, retrograde in Pisces is that when you have the courage to be vulnerable with somebody who is worthy of your vulnerability, that they will show you the compassion and empathy that you truly desire for yourself. And in return, when they're vulnerable with you, maybe in the same instant, you will show them compassion and empathy for the shame that they feel within themselves. And through that we find healing. Which leads us to the second transit of the week, because the second transit of the week is Mars in Sagittarius, which is a very different energy from Mars in Scorpio, because Sagittarius is mutable fire. Fire is more extroverted, where water is more introverted, because water is something where you are initiating the touch more so than water is initiating the touch with you. And Scorpio is water. It's that swamp in the middle of the forest. It's not going anywhere. It's not jumping out at you, but it's there lurking. You have to go into it. Whereas fire is extroverted because it's something that can touch you. It burns across the forest. It's coming after you. But it's not something that you can touch. That's a difference. The energetic difference between fire and water. Introverted water, extroverted fire. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the god of thunder, lord of justice, the planet of luck and expansion. It's symbolized by the archer. When I think of the archer, I think of Robin Hood or Katniss Everdeen. Freedom-loving individuals that don't want anyone to tell them where to go, how to think, what to do, what to say. They know the difference between right or wrong, and they want the freedom to explore far and wide so they can expand their minds, deepen their philosophical view, and speak their truth. And so when Mars in Scorpio forms a trine with Neptune retrograde in Pisces, and you have the courage to be vulnerable with those who are worthy of your vulnerability, and in return they show you compassion and empathy, from that point, now you have the courage to be free. You have the courage to do what you want, to say what you want, because you know that within yourself, you are righteous, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that like you really want to do good. You're really doing the best that you can to spread the light. If you're beating yourself up, if you're hiding, then this Mars and Sagittarius frequency may be challenging for you, because you're going to feel this urge to really put yourself out there, and in doing so, the truth is revealed. Sagittarius is the sign of truth, honesty. Do you have the courage to be honest and truthful? In my conversation with Ricky King last week, she brought up one of my favorite paradoxes, that the phrase about truth, that the truth hurts, but the truth will also set you free. And so with Mars transiting through Sagittarius from November 4th to December 14th, there may be instances where the truth is revealed and it hurts. It's sometimes painful to see or hear or experience the truth. But after that initial pain, the truth will actually set you free. So think about it like this. Here's just an example, but let's say that with the first transit of Mars in Scorpio, Trine Neptune retrograde in Pisces, you take off your clothes in front of somebody that you think loves you and that you love them, or you share a secret with somebody that you think you can trust. And instead of them saying, "Wow, you're so beautiful," or "I hear what you're saying and I totally understand, and I'm with you 100% regardless," instead of that, they say, "Oh, put your clothes back on. I actually don't find you attractive." Or, "You did what?" "What? Oh my God. You should be totally embarrassed." Oh. That hurts. That hurts. You take your clothes off and somebody tells you that they don't think you're attractive. You share a secret that you feel embarrassed about and shameful of, and they double down on that shame. That hurts. But even though the truth hurts, it's what we need. Because in that instance, if you take off your clothes with somebody and they say that "I'm not attracted to you," the truth will set you free, because you realize that's not your person. You share something personal with somebody that causes you to feel vulnerable, and they laugh at you instead of empathize with you. You know that that's not your person. You have now been set free from having to engage with that person any longer. And we've been doing deep work around relationships since back in August, when Mars transited into Libra, right? We were talking about that last week, in last week's episode, about how Mars transited into Libra on August 6th. So from August 6th until November 4th, Mars was either in Libra, which is relationships, or Scorpio, which is relationships on steroids. It's relationships to the next degree, the next level. Well, now we've done that deep work, and Mars in Sagittarius is setting us free. And so you are either feeling free within the context of your relationship because you know that you have your ride or die, that this person thinks that I'm beautiful, I share my body with them, they love that, I share my secrets with them, they love me for that. Or I try to share my body, my secrets, or my money with somebody, and they rejected me, and now I'm free from them. So I'm either free because the relationships that I'm in are now more solid, and because they're more solid, I can go and just be myself. Or I realize that my relationships are not what I thought they were, and they're not the relationships that I'm meant to be in, and so now I can move along. That's what Mars in Sagittarius is doing. Now, for those of you, which is everyone probably, who is born with key astrological points or planets in Gemini, Virgo, or Pisces, whenever Mars moves through and hits whatever those planets are, there could be tension. The strongest tension is with Virgo and Pisces because Virgo and Pisces square Sagittarius, and when you square off with someone, it's a fight or a very awkward country and Western dance. Either way, it requires movement to relieve or release the tension. Virgo's focused on the details. Pisces is very compassionate. Gemini is very curious. And the truth of Sagittarius kind of flies in the face of all three of those signs. So if you were born with Venus in Virgo, at some point during this period, November 4th to December 14th, Mars in Sagittarius is going to square off with your Venus, which means there's probably going to be a conflict in your relationship. And it's trying to break you out of that perfectionist sort of mentality. And the truth is, maybe pointing out how you've been too hard on your partner, or maybe you've been too hard on yourself within partnership. If you were born with Venus in Gemini and Mars is going to oppose that could indicate a conflict in the relationship. Maybe you're asking too many questions and you're not really focused on your own personal truth. It's pushing you to define your truth rather than wonder what everyone else thinks. Or maybe I should try this or that. No, what is true within you? And then when you think about Pisces, if you were born with Venus in Pisces, Mars in Sagittarius is going to square your Venus. Conflict in relationship. Maybe you're being too heavy, too compassionate, too empathetic. You're giving more than you should. And this Mars in Sagittarius is waking you up to that. And you're realizing that, oh, yeah, I have been. Maybe I need to take back a little more for myself. So there's a lot happening here with this transit. And of course, if you're curious to know how Mars in Sagittarius, or Venus in Scorpio, or any of the transits that we're talking about here, if you're curious to know how they're affecting you directly and would like support and guidance through navigating these transits, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. you can schedule a live reading or a recorded reading at theweeklytransit.com. I'll look forward to hearing from you and supporting you through these transits. Or if you're just curious about your astrological code. It's my purpose to help you understand who you are so you can accept, appreciate, and love who you are and learn to thrive in life exactly the way that you are. The last few times that Mars transited through Sagittarius, November 24th, 2023 to January 4th, 2024, December 13th, 2021 to January 24th, 2022, January 3rd to February 16th, 2020. Think back to those dates for clues on what was going on in your life during that period that will hopefully give you some insight in what could be in store for you this time around as Mars transits through Sagittarius from November 4th to December 14th. The third transit of the week, continuing with Mars in Sagittarius, forms an opposition to Uranus retrograde in Gemini. This is Tuesday to Thursday, November 4th to the 6th, with the exact opposition occurring on Tuesday, November 4th. This is shaking you out of old thought patterns. It's helping you to revolutionize the way that you're thinking. Maybe it's urging you to act more quickly, more impulsively, but you want to remain patient. Remember that the archer, the symbol of Sagittarius, requires patience in order to hit the target. You gotta breathe. And so some uncertainty could come up here on Tuesday, Tud, the day of Mars. Tud is the Old Norse god associated with the Roman god Mars. So Mars transits into Sagittarius on the day of Mars and forms an opposition to Uranus retrograde in Gemini on the day of Mars. So there might be some impulsivity and impatience, agitation that's coming up around this day, November 4th. Pump the brakes. Take your time. What's going on in your mind? Something is being stimulated in your mind, and rather than just reacting, take a moment to think differently so that maybe the actions that you take are going to be different, radically different than what you would have done in that circumstance previously. That's what Mars in Sagittarius opposing Uranus retrograde in Gemini is supporting you to do. To take a different approach. But in order to take that different approach, you might need to pause for a moment before just doing the knee-jerk muscle memory reaction. Shifting, moving, changing, adapting. The fourth transit of the week is the full moon in Taurus, which is at the 13th degree, which is an Aries degree. Aries is ruled by Mars, so this is adding to that impulsivity. This occurs at 5:18 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, November 5th. This is so powerful. I'm just thinking about what's coming ahead during the week. The full moon's a release. So we want to release the frequency that's no longer serving us. And this is a release of that new moon energy that we set our intentions around. the new moon at 28 degrees in Libra a couple weeks ago, setting your intentions for what you want from your relationships, setting your intentions to create balance, harmony, and fairness in relationship. This full moon in Taurus is urging you to be more vulnerable. And hopefully, if you are following through with your intentions of that new moon in Libra to initiate the conversations that you need to have in order to create balance, harmony, equanimity, fairness in relationships, and you've done that, now you have the ability to go a little deeper, be more vulnerable, deepen the intimacy. Taurus is the fixed earth sign symbolized by the bull. The bull is not a vulnerable creature. It is big, it is strong, it is powerful. Taurus is ruled by Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships. So Venus ruling Taurus is about connecting you to the senses of what you like and what you don't like, what you value, what you don't value. But this full moon is saying, what are you clinging on to? What are you holding on to so tightly? Like, have you barricaded yourself in a room full of all your things? And now you can't even get out into the world? No one else can get in? In what way are your values or material possessions preventing you from receiving the intimacy that you truly desire? That 13th degree Aries is like, where are you being selfish? In what ways are you being overprotective? Because now is the time to release, remove those barriers, to allow them to dissolve, so that you can truly merge with others. Because it is through the merging of your energy and another that the magic happens. The magic happens. And I can't help but think about Gabriella and me having babies. We had to remove our clothes to make a baby, but it's deeper than that. It's also the fear. It's the fear of getting intimate or vulnerable with somebody. Because in order for us to do that, we had to be willing to be vulnerable with one another, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. There's so much more that goes along with creating another life than just the physical act of sex, whether anyone's aware of that or not. But there's a power there through the intentionality of it, through really being intentional with, we are going to create another life here. And now there's two lives. That's the power of Scorpio that we're working with here. And you can't forget about Scorpio when you're thinking about the full moon in Taurus, because the reason we're able to see the moon in Taurus and it's full is because the sun in Scorpio is reflecting its light upon the moon. And it's reminding us that in order to truly receive the vulnerability that we desire, the intimacy that we desire, in order to receive that intimacy, to experience it, we have to release or allow the barriers that are preventing us from receiving that intimacy to dissolve. And it's scary. Nobody said it was easy. It takes courage. The 5th transit of the week. Oh, and before I go to that, just a reminder, we've got the moon cycle class coming up in November, where we're going to talk about the new moon in Scorpio and the full moon in Gemini. You can enroll at theweeklytransit.com. So if you want to hear about, you want to get deeper into the next lunar cycle, the new moon, the full moon, where that's happening in every single house, what it means, so you can apply it to your own chart, enroll in my moon cycle classes at theweeklytransit.com. Now, the 5th transit of the week is helping with this deepening of intimacy, with Venus transiting into Scorpio from November 6th to the 30th. November 6th to 30th, Venus transits through Scorpio. I mean, this is deepening the bond. And you can't deepen the bond if you have barricaded yourself with your values and your sense of security. So the full moon in Taurus comes and says, release and allow your fear around intimacy. What is blocking you from that? And again, this is not just intimate with anyone, it's intimate with those who are worthy of receiving your vulnerability, because there's trust. And there's trust because you know that this person, when you're around them, you feel elevated by them rather than drained. They feel elevated by you rather than drained. Well, Venus transiting through Scorpio is really going to highlight that from November 6th to the 30th. It's going to bring about an intensity in relationships where you're not going to be able to ignore where you have been drained in your relationships, or who is draining you, or what experiences are draining you, or what experiences or people are lifting you up. It can be scary, Venus in Scorpio, especially coupled with Mars in Sagittarius at the same time, and Mercury in Sagittarius at the same time. So we've got the Sun and Venus in Scorpio, which are illuminating and bringing about the senses in a very vulnerable way, while Mars and Mercury in Sagittarius are spitting the truth. So that frequency of truth might be bringing something to the surface that's very uncomfortable, that causes you to feel drained in your relationships. What is it about your relationships do you want to transform? Do you want to end the relationship? I mean, Scorpio is the sign of death, but it's also the sign of transformation. So Venus in Scorpio brings about a unique opportunity to facilitate the death of your relationship, which could also be the rebirth of your relationship. You have the support to go to your partner and say, this isn't working for me. It needs to change. And they can say, okay, let's change it. Or that doesn't work for me. Bye. Whatever. There's no wrong way about this. Either you want to work on it or you don't. But Venus in Scorpio is pulling you down into the sticky, icky, uncomfortable places within your relationship that you've been ignoring, but they need to be addressed because they've been festering. So think back to the dates where Venus has transited through Scorpio previously for clues on what could be in store for you this time around as Venus transits through Scorpio, September 22nd to October 17th, 2024, December 4th to the 29th, 2023, October 23rd to November 16th, 2022, September 10th to October 7th, 2021. If you were born with key astrological points or planets in Taurus, Leo, or Aquarius, there could be challenges when Venus transits through Scorpio. If you're born with Mars in Taurus, or Mars in Leo, or in Aquarius, when Venus transits through Scorpio and hits that Mars, there could be challenges in your relationships. If you were born with Mars in Taurus, and whenever that comes about, when Venus is opposing your Mars, it may bring to the surface where you're maybe clinging a little too tightly to what's yours. And the fact that you're clinging so tightly to what's yours is what is preventing you from receiving what you truly desire in your relationship. Loosen the grip. When Venus in Scorpio squares your Mars in Leo, you're being awakened to where maybe you're being selfish. Maybe you're realizing that I've been selfish in this area, or I've been arrogant, or a little too bold, a little too extravagant. When Venus squares your Mars in Aquarius, it may be brought to light where, your group of friends is getting in the way. Your connection to this group or that group or these social activities is getting in the way of the intimacy that you desire in your relationships. So do you have the courage to get deep within your relationships? Do you have the courage to transform your relationships? Really think, where am I on November 6th? And then take note, and where are you on November 30th? What has changed? What has transformed in your relationships? The sixth transit of the week, Mars in Sagittarius, forms a sextile with Pluto in Aquarius. This is helping facilitate the changes or transformations that need to occur within the community or the group construct. As we're acting more freely, more openly, we're putting out a frequency that's helping to attract the right people into our auric field, let's say. Pluto's the god of death, the planet of transformation, lord of the underworld. Aquarius is the fixed air sign symbolized by the water bear. This transit between Mars and Pluto occurs from Tuesday to Friday, with the exact sextile occurring on Thursday, November 6th. So this is heating things up in a good way, let's say. You're really being supported in getting out there, being social, connecting, sharing thoughts and ideas, and offending people, scaring people away and attracting a whole other group of people. Be open to the transformations that are occurring within your social dynamics. The seventh transit of the week is Uranus, retrograde in Taurus. Moves back to 29 degrees in Taurus, where it will be until April 25th of 2026. So this is the final run of Uranus in Taurus. The next time Uranus will be in Taurus after this run will be April 25th, 2102. So this is it. I got a lot to say about this transit at the end through the Substack Essay of the Week. And so the only thing I'll say here, because we get deeper into it later, is that Uranus entered its retrograde shadow in Taurus on May 20th, 2025, at 27 degrees and 27 minutes. It began retrograde in Gemini on September 5th. Now it's moved back into Taurus. Uranus goes direct in Taurus on February 3rd, 2026, it will be exactly where it was on May 20th, 2025. Then Uranus enters Gemini on April 25th, 2026, and exits its retrograde shadow on May 21st, 2026. So literally 1 year and a day, Uranus is between 27 degrees and 27 minutes and 1 degree in 27 minutes. 27 in Taurus and 1:27 in Gemini. From May 20th, 2025 to May 21st, 2026. This is our final assignment of revolutionizing our relationship to the material and what we value. Take note. And this is supporting us through that full moon energy. The full moon is helping us release, and Uranus in Taurus is helping us revolutionize what we value. Full moon is releasing what we value that's no longer serving us. Uranus in Taurus is revolutionizing our values, helping us flow. The 8th transit of the week, Venus in Scorpio, square Pluto in Aquarius. This is from Thursday to Saturday, November 6th to the 8th, with the exact square occurring on Friday, November 7th. Friday is Frigg. Frigg is the old Norse god associated with the Roman god Venus. So Friday, Venus. A little tongue-tied here, but yeah, you get it. It's the day of Venus. And that's the day that Venus is squaring Pluto in Aquarius. So, you go back to Mars in Sagittarius, sextile Pluto in Aquarius. That's happening like right before, but kind of at the same time as this transit with Venus in Scorpio. As we go out in the world and we're being really open and honest and straightforward through our actions with Mars in Sagittarius, it's transforming the community, it's changing us. But then Venus in Scorpio squaring Pluto in Aquarius is maybe creating that more difficult transformation. It's like you're being open and honest, and you realize that you are repelling people that you thought were your friends, they don't want to listen to you anymore, they don't want to see you anymore, they don't like you anymore. You're clearing space. It's not easy, it's not fun. This Venus in Scorpio brings up a lot. Anyone who was born with Venus in Scorpio knows, it's like that line from Brokeback Mountain. I can't quit you. I think that's the line. But it's, Venus in Scorpio has a hard time quitting relationships, has a hard time moving on from relationships. And the square with Pluto, the planetary ruler of Scorpio, squaring Venus in Scorpio, is maybe doing that deep, difficult work that you're having trouble doing on your own. And so this transit's going to help it be done for you, but you still have to accept it. It might be painful or uncomfortable, but maybe some secrets are coming to the surface that can't be ignored. Secrets that you've been hiding that have been revealed. Secrets that other people are hiding that have been revealed. Secrets are coming to the surface here, the end of the week. And through those secrets, you're discovering that, oh, yeah, this doesn't work for me. This is not my relationship. This isn't the type of relationship that I want to be involved in. So either it needs to change or I need to move on. The 9th transit of the week, the Sun in Scorpio, trine the North Node retrograde in Pisces. This is Thursday to Sunday, around the same time as the Venus-Pluto aspect, with the exact trine occurring on Saturday, November 8th. The North Node, the karmic pathway of the soul, or soul's purpose, transiting through Pisces, the Sun, the planet of light, life, and vitality. This is supporting us through these difficult transformations because it's helping you see the big picture of things. It's helping you recognize that, I was involved in this relationship. I really stayed in that relationship for too long, and now it's ending in a really uncomfortable way where it doesn't feel complete, it doesn't feel completed. How can I be more compassionate with myself? Well, okay, let's think back to where this relationship began, who I was in the beginning, how I changed through it. And I just cared so much about this person that even though the last 17 times I've spent with them, I feel drained. It feels painful. It feels uncomfortable. I feel agitated. I stuck with it. That doesn't make me a bad person. I really cared. And I needed to learn what I learned from that relationship so the next time I'm in a relationship like that, I'm going to be more aware. I'm not going to wait being drained 17 times before I realize that this is probably somebody I shouldn't be spending a lot of time with. And it's about being empathetic to them. They were probably being drained by me. Sometimes just two people don't fit. It's oil and water. They just don't fit. They don't mix. We tried to make it happen. We tried to make it work. Or at least I did. I assume they did too, in their own way, even though maybe we didn't talk about it. The North Node in Pisces is trying to help us see the big picture. That everything is happening exactly as it's meant to happen. Yes, it's annoying. Especially when everything that's happening exactly as it's meant to happen means that I'm feeling pain within that context. Everything happens for a reason. Okay, well, it still sucks. I still feel pain. But what is the pain teaching you? What are you learning from the pain, from the suffering? And through that suffering, can you show yourself compassion and recognize that every choice that you've made, even the ones that you regret, were made so that you could have the experience you were meant to have so your soul could grow? Because your soul is growing right now because you're aware of the experience that you had. You're aware of the pain that you suffered because of that experience, and you're aware of the choices that you made that led to that pain, the same choices that you will not make again. But you had to go through it in order to recognize that moving forward, you're going to make a different choice. And that's how the Sun in Scorpio, trine the North Node retrograde in Pisces, is supporting you. Especially in those deep, intimate bonds that you share with those you love or have loved the most. And the final transit of the week, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, is helping us reflect on the past and take an honest look at our past. I'll admit it, with Gabriella about to give birth to our twins, I've been thinking about some of my exes. I even looked up one of my exes on Instagram, went through her timeline a bit. So glad I've moved on from that relationship. It was a hard one, really, really hard. Ugh. But I was able to look back and at her photos and still have compassion for her. To take an honest look at myself and who I was within that relationship. That's what Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is about, because Sagittarius is the sign of honesty and Mercury is the mind. The planet of consciousness, communication, coordination, the god of merchants and thieves, the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld. It's taken us into those deep areas of our psyche and saying, can you take an honest look here? Can you be truthful about the experiences that you had? Can you be honest with yourself in your own mind? When you can look back at your relationships and recognize where maybe you would have done things differently, it will support you in doing things differently moving forward. Yeah. It's through this honest look that's going to take us into that deeper, darker area, because Mercury retrograde doesn't end in Sagittarius. That's where it begins. It ends in Scorpio. So from now, November 9th, until November 18th, when Mercury transits back into Scorpio, from the 9th to the 18th, 9 days of brutal honesty, 9 days of spitting the truth to yourself and those around you. It's going to help stir things up so that when Mercury transits back into Scorpio on November 18th and is there until it moves back into Sagittarius, which is December 11th. So from November 18th to December 11th, it's about having those deep, uncomfortable conversations that need to be had in order to transform your mental process and the way that you think about intimacy. In order to transform your mental process and how you think about and what you think about intimacy, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to be honest with others, because that is what is righteous. The truth hurts, but the truth will set you free. You got to deal with the pain first. It's not easy to hear the truth, but once you know it and you get over the pain, it really does set you free. So expect some discomfort in this Mercury retrograde, as every Mercury retrograde. And I hear from people that are like, oh, this Mercury retrograde, it hasn't been that bad for me. And then, the last day of Mercury retrograde or in the retrograde shadow, it's like, oh, yeah, it got me. It got me. Just slow down. Take your time. There's no need to celebrate or be stuck in the doom and gloom. Just be in that center space. Watching, observing, being a part of the experience. Really focus what's on your plate. Focus on everything that's already on your plate, on your list. Clear it off. Refrain from being impulsive. Because when things get uncomfortable, that's when everybody wants to shift, change plans, and then Mercury retrograde ends, it moves out of its shadow, and you're like, what did I do? Why did I stop doing that? Now I started this whole other project, and I don't even know what I'm doing with this. We have got to learn to be okay with the discomfort in this dopamine fix, and I'm guilty of it too. Like the Instagram scrolling, like all that sort of stuff. You just want to feel good for 5 seconds. Sometimes you have to allow yourself to be in the discomfort. And that's where the transformation occurs. And there's a lot of transformation that is available through this Mercury retrograde transit, because it's going to be back in Scorpio. It's going to be retrograde in Scorpio from November 18th to the 29th. And then it's still in Scorpio from the 29th of November to December 11th. But Mercury moved into its retrograde shadow on October 21st. The retrograde begins on Sunday, November 9th. It ends in Scorpio on November 29th. And then it moves out of its retrograde shadow on December 16th. Slow down and sit with the painful truth. It's like I think of this as, so from November 9th to the 18th, that's when the painful truth is revealed. November 18th to December 11th, when Mercury is transiting retrograde and then direct in Scorpio, that's where the transformation occurs, and we're processing the uncomfortable truth. And then by the time we get to December 11th, that's when the truth sets us free, because we've done the work. We've done the work. We've allowed ourselves to sit through that discomfort. I mean, God, talk to Gabriella. Like, talk about transformation. Her body and growing 2 children, it's uncomfortable. Energetically, that's what we're all doing. So we have to sit through the discomfort of the truth, and ultimately we'll be free with our children. Okay, let's get to the Substack essay of the week. Thank you so much to everyone who is subscribing to my Substack, especially those who have contributed to become a paid member of my Substack. And I am creating content specifically for those who are paying for the content. And if you are paying for the content, I'll remind you that you get an $8 discount on the moon cycle classes. So I'm going to be sending out that code to you very shortly so that you can sign up for the moon cycle classes. But I just really appreciate all the support. Thank you so much for listening and for reading. When the ground becomes unstable, what Uranus in Taurus has been teaching us about value and security. Uranus is the planet of revolution and the unexpected, the lightning bolt that shatters what we thought was solid, the earthquake that reminds us nothing is permanent. Taurus is the fixed earth sign, the ground beneath our feet, ruled by Venus, goddess of love and beauty. Taurus represents material security, physical resources, the body, the earth itself, and what we value. When Uranus entered Taurus on March 6th, 2019, lightning cracked across a dry Los Angeles sky, an omen in a place that rarely sees storms. It was as if the universe itself announced something electric, something that breaks all the normal patterns. The world thought it understood stability. We thought we knew what security meant. We thought the ground was solid. We were wrong. The last time this happened, Uranus transits through each sign for approximately 7 years. It won't return to Taurus until April 25th, 2002, exactly 76 years from its final departure on April 25th, 2026. The last time Uranus moved through Taurus was 1935 to 1942, the Great Depression, World War II. A period when material security evaporated overnight, when the global financial system collapsed, when millions lost everything they thought was stable, and money itself got revolutionized. In 1933, FDR's Executive Order 6102 took the United States off the gold standard, fundamentally severing the link between paper currency and physical gold. Money was no longer something you could hold in your hand and know had intrinsic worth. It became abstract, backed by government decree rather than precious metal. A revolution in what constitutes value. Before that, 1851 to 1858, the California Gold Rush. A revolution in how we extracted value from the earth. A mass migration driven by the promise of material wealth. A complete upheaval of what prosperity meant. Consider what this actually looked like. Hundreds of thousands of people, desperate enough, hungry enough, hopeful enough, climbing into horse-drawn wagons and traveling thousands of miles across unmapped wilderness, risking disease, starvation, violence, death, all for the chance to kneel by a riverbank and pan for flecks of gold. Most found nothing. Many died trying, and yet they went anyway. Because the existing system wasn't working, because material security felt impossible where they were, because the promise of wealth extracted directly from the earth felt more reliable than anything the established economy could offer. During this period, gold dust became currency in the American West. People carried it in pouches, weighed it out for transactions, bypassed banks entirely. The very concept of what money was, what had value, what you could trade for goods and services, got revolutionized. Value became something you could pull directly from the earth, unmediated by traditional financial systems. Every time Uranus enters Taurus, the ground shakes. Our relationship to material gets revolutionized. What we thought was secure becomes volatile. What we valued gets reevaluated. And how we understand money, what it is, where it comes from, what gives it worth, fundamentally changes. And this transit, the final passage from November 7th, 2025 through April 25th, 2026, is our last chance to integrate the lessons before the revolution moves elsewhere. March 2020. The ground evaporates. In 2020, the global economy contracted by 3.4%, the deepest recession since the Great Depression. The U.S. economy alone would lose $14 trillion by 2023. U.S. unemployment hit 14.7% in April 2020, the highest rate recorded since the Bureau of Labor Statistics began tracking in 1948. COVID-19 wasn't just a health crisis. It was Uranus in Taurus made manifest. A sudden, unexpected disruption to the physical world that shattered every assumption we held about material security. Workers in low-wage, face-to-face industries, disproportionately women, workers of color, and those without college degrees, experienced massive employment and earning losses. The ground was not equally solid for everyone. It never had been. Businesses closed, supply chains collapsed, the physical infrastructure of daily life, the offices, the restaurants, the shops, the airports, became dangerous. U.S. home prices surged a total of 43.2% between March 2020 and June 2022, making material security, a home, shelter, the most Taurian need, increasingly unattainable for millions. Uranus in Taurus asks, what happens when the earth itself becomes unstable? What happens when the material world we built our lives upon suddenly shifts? 2021 to 2022, the Great Resignation, when workers said, enough. Then came the revolution we didn't see coming. 47 million Americans quit their jobs in 2021, representing 23.5% of the entire workforce. In 2022, that number climbed even higher. 50.5 million people walked away from their jobs, shattering the previous year's record. The quit rate reached 3.0% in November 2021, the highest level since the Bureau of Labor Statistics began tracking the metric in December 2000. This wasn't burnout. This was revolution. Workers cited low pay, no opportunities for advancement, and feeling disrespected at work as their top reasons for quitting. But beneath those reasons was something deeper, a fundamental reevaluation of what work is worth, what security means, what we're willing to trade our time, our lives, our bodies for. Uranus in Taurus revolutionized our relationship to labor, to value, to the exchange of our physical presence for material security. Workers looked at the equation and said, this doesn't work anymore. This ground is not solid. We're building something different. The planet of revolution met the sign of material security, and workers everywhere asked the most Uranian question possible. Why are we doing it this way? The housing market. When shelter becomes speculation. In 2021 alone, U.S. house prices surged by an unprecedented 18%, the highest single-year increase on record since tracking began in 1976. Year over year, home price growth peaked at 20.8% by March 2022. Housing, the most fundamental form of material security, the literal ground beneath us, became wildly, catastrophically volatile. Then the pendulum swung. Mortgage rates more than doubled between January 2022 and October 2023, rising at a pace unseen since the early 1980s. What had been affordable became impossible. What had been stable became chaotic. Uranus doesn't care about your 5-year plan. Uranus doesn't respect the idea that housing always appreciates. Uranus in Taurus says the earth moves, value shifts. What you thought was solid ground can become quicksand in an instant. And millions discovered that material security, a home, a place to live, the most basic Taurian need, had become a luxury they could no longer afford. The housing market wasn't predictable. Prices can surge 40% in 2 years and become unaffordable overnight when rates double. Cryptocurrency, when money itself gets revolutionized. From November 2020 to February 2021, Bitcoin's market capitalization grew at an unprecedented rate of 321%, breaching the $1 trillion mark. By November 2021, the entire cryptocurrency market briefly surpassed $3 trillion in value. Money, the ultimate Taurian symbol of material worth, got revolutionized. Just as the gold rush made money something you extracted directly from the earth, bypassing traditional banks, and the Great Depression made money something backed by government decree rather than gold, crypto made money something that exists in pure consensus, in code, in networks of strangers agreeing that ones and zeros hold worth. No governments needed, no central banks required, no physical form at all. Bitcoin hit an all-time high of $69,000 in November 2021. Millions of people who had never owned stocks suddenly owned pieces of digital currencies. The very concept of what constitutes real value, what's sold, what's secure, what you can build a future on, got thrown into question. This is Uranus and Taurus at its most literal, a revolution in how we understand material worth. The pattern repeated across centuries. Each time Uranus enters Taurus, the definition of money itself transforms. The earth itself. Climate displacement as material reality. Over the past decade, weather-related disasters caused 220 million internal displacements, approximately 60,000 people displaced every single day. In 2020 alone, 30.7 million people were internally displaced by climate-related events, 3 times more than by conflict or violence. The ground itself, Taurus, the earth, the soil, the physical planet, became unstable. Floods, droughts, wildfires, hurricanes, over 800,000 people displaced by flooding in South Sudan. Hurricane Ida killing 95 people and causing $65 billion in losses. European floods killing 240 people with damage exceeding $43 billion. These are just 3 examples among dozens, hundreds we could cite. The pattern is relentless, global, accelerating. Uranus in Taurus has been teaching us the most uncomfortable lesson. The earth moves. The ground is not stable. Material reality itself is subject to disruption, to revolution, to sudden and unexpected change. And we, all of us, are being forced to reevaluate our relationship to the physical planet we live on. November 5th, 2025, the full moon release. 2 days before Uranus retrogrades back into Taurus, there is a full moon in Taurus. This is not coincidence. Full moons are releases, letting go of what has reached completion, what has served its purpose, what needs to be shed. And this full moon in Taurus is asking us to release our attachment to false security, to let go of what we've mistaken for security, the jobs that drain us, the possessions we don't need, the belief that we never have enough. To release our grip on what we think keeps us safe, but actually keeps us stuck. This is the preparation, the softening, the invitation to step into courageous vulnerability before the ground shakes again. Because when you release your grip on what you thought was solid, when you stop clinging to false stability, you're already moving. And when the ground shifts, as it will, as it must, you won't fall, you'll flow. November 7th, 2025 to April 25th, 2026, the final reckoning. Uranus retrogrades back into Taurus for one last passage, one final opportunity to integrate what the past 6 years have been screaming at us. Material security is not what you thought it was. The stable job? It wasn't stable. Millions proved that by walking away. The housing market? It wasn't predictable. Prices can surge 40% in 2 years and become unaffordable overnight when rates double. Money itself, it's not fixed. Value is consensus. Currency is agreement, and that agreement can shift from gold in riverbeds to government-backed paper to digital code existing nowhere and everywhere at once. The earth beneath our feet, it's not solid. It moves, it floods, it burns, and it displaces millions who thought their homes were permanent. Uranus in Taurus has spent these years demolishing our illusions about what constitutes security. And now, these final 5.5 months, we have one last chance to answer the question the transit has been asking all along. What do you actually value? Not what you were told to value, not what the market says has value, not what your parents' generation built their lives around. What do you value? And are you building your life around that? Or around the ghost of security that Uranus has been systematically destroying? The body as a mirror. All of this sounds vast. Markets, systems, the planet itself. But Taurus rules your body's sense of safety and pleasure. The revolution isn't just in the world, it's in your senses, your throat, your voice, your breath, the way you touch, taste, and trust life itself. If the ground is shaking, begin by listening to what your body tells you is stable. The sound of your own voice, the rhythm of your breath, the feel of what's real beneath your hands. The questions we must answer. These final months demand radical honesty. What am I holding on to because I think it provides security when it actually doesn't? Where am I staying in situations, jobs, relationships, living arrangements, because I'm afraid of instability when the ground is already unstable? What would I do differently if I accepted that material security is not permanent, not guaranteed, and subject to sudden change? How am I complicit in systems that value profit over people, speculation over shelter, extraction over sustainability? What does enough actually mean to me? Not to the economy, not to my social media feed, but to me. Uranus in Taurus has shown us that the old models don't work. The ground has already shifted. The revolution already happened. Over 100 million people changed their relationship to work. Housing became unaffordable. Money became digital. The earth itself is demanding we change. The question is, have we changed with it? Or are we still clinging to the illusion that if we just work a little harder, save a little more, hold on a little tighter, the ground will stop moving? After April 25th, 2026, Uranus enters Gemini. When Uranus leaves Taurus and enters Gemini, the revolution moves from the material to the mental, from the body to the mind, from resources to information, from what we have to what we know. The ground will still be unstable, but we'll have moved past the phase of being shocked by that instability. We'll either have adapted, or we'll be desperately trying to rebuild systems that Uranus already demolished. These 5 months are not about finding security, they're about finding resilience. Security is the illusion that the ground won't move. Resilience is the capacity to keep your balance when it does. What we leave behind. Uranus completes its transit through Taurus on April 25th, 2026. It won't return until April 25th, 2102. None of us reading this will be alive then, but our children will be. They'll be elders in their 70s and 80s, living in whatever world we leave them. Our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the descendants we'll never know will be the adults navigating that transit, raising their own children, making their own choices about work, money, housing, and the earth. When Uranus returns to Taurus in 2102, the ground will shake again. In the material world they inhabit, the relationship to value, to labor, to security, to the planet, will be determined by what we do or refuse to do in these final 5 months. Are we breaking the patterns? Or are we passing forward the same illusions about security, the same extraction, the same systems that have already failed? When the ground shakes for them, will they have the resilience they need because we learned how to adapt, because we learned to adapt now? Will they have systems built on flexibility rather than rigidity, on sustainability rather than exploitation, on enough rather than endless growth? This is not philosophical. This is ancestral. This is practical. The revolution we choose now becomes the foundation they stand on. The ground is shaking. What are you teaching the generations to come about how to adapt when everything dissolves? I hope this message has been empowering to you. I hope you have an amazing week ahead. I'm so grateful for your presence here with me, and I'll look forward to reconnecting with you next week. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.